What would you do if your own family treated you like you were invisible? If they celebrated your brother's every mediocre achievement while dismissing your hard-won success as a phase you'd grow out of? Hi, I'm Vanessa Powell. I'm 38 years old and the founder of Nexus Technologies, a multi-million-dollar tech company I built from the ground up without a cent of family investment. And this is the story of how a seating chart at my brother's wedding exposed decades of favoritism, manipulation, and silence, and how I finally said enough. Before I take you into the storm, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand your ground alone. Because sometimes, family isn't the support system, it's the obstacle. Let's go back to where it all began. Growing up in Westfield, Connecticut, my brother Scott and I were thick as thieves. Only 2 years apart, we built forts in the backyard and sledded down Maple Hill in the winter until our cheeks turned red. We had matching lunches in elementary school, courtesy of our mom, Judith. Our dad, Robert, took us fishing every summer on Lake Champlain. Childhood felt equal, but that balance shattered slowly, subtly as we got older. When we entered high school, Scott followed Dad's legacy into football, becoming the starting quarterback. I, on the other hand, joined the debate team and spent weekends coding clunky websites in my bedroom. Guess which one got the applause? My parents never missed a game. They'd show up in matching Powell construction jackets, screaming Scott's name from the bleachers. Meanwhile, my science fair ribbons and debate trophies gathered dust in my room. Sometimes they'd forget to show up entirely. Business and sports build character, my dad would say with a proud slap on Scott's back. All that computer stuff, it's just a hobby, Vanessa. You'll grow out of it. Spoiler, I didn't. I earned a full ride to MIT. Scott scraped by with a C average at our father's alma mater, thanks to a partial athletic scholarship. But even then, family holidays were dominated by tales of Scott's frat parties and spring break trips. My academic achievements were politely nodded at, then drowned in the next round of his football glory stories. I remember once during Thanksgiving dinner, I tried sharing that I'd been selected for a competitive tech internship in Boston. "That's nice, honey," my mom said, glancing at the oven timer. "Now, Scott, tell us more about that big game you played against Yale. No one even asked which company I was interning at." After graduation, I joined a startup in Boston. I worked 80-hour weeks, slept under my desk some nights, and soaked up everything I could about supply chain software and scalable systems. Scott. He walked into a management role at Powell Construction, our family business with zero real experience. I'll never forget that Sunday dinner when I finally asked why. My mom looked at me like I was naive. "It's about practical experience, not just book smarts. Scott understands how the real world works, right? The real world where mediocrity gets rewarded with corner offices and legacy handshakes, as long as you're the son." At 28, I took a massive leap. I emptied my savings, secured a business loan, and founded Nexus Technologies from my one-bedroom apartment. I converted the living room into a makeshift office and slept on a pull-out couch for nearly 2 years. No investment from my parents, no calls asking how it was going, just occasional suggestions that I come back and work for the family company. "I'm worried about you," my mother would say. "You're working so hard for something so uncertain." And yet, when Scott was promoted to VP, an entirely invented title, they threw him a backyard barbecue complete with a custom banner and champagne. No one celebrated when I signed my first client. And yet, I kept going. Because deep down, I believed that if I just succeeded big enough, loud enough, publicly enough, one day, they'd finally see me. I didn't know then that the bigger I became, the harder they'd try to shrink me. But the real shock was still to come. 2 years of sleeping on a pull-out couch finally paid off. We cracked it. My team at Nexus Technologies developed a revolutionary supply chain software that streamlined operations in ways our competitors couldn't touch. What started as survival became momentum. Companies that had ignored my emails were now calling me. I hired my first employees. I moved into a real office. I even upgraded from ramen to real meals. But the moment that truly changed everything, Bradford Enterprises, a national real estate development giant worth billions. Their operations director, Eleanor Wright, found us through a tech conference where I'd presented our system. She had no idea about my family when she reached out. It was pure merit. After months of meetings, audits, and tests, they signed a $30 million contract, our largest deal ever. A deal that would fund international expansion and cement Nexus as a rising star in the industry. I was ecstatic. This was legacy building. So I did what any daughter would do. I told my parents during one of our weekly calls. "That's nice, dear," my mother said flatly. "Did you get the invitation to Scott and Tiffany's engagement party? It's going to be at the Bradford estate. Richard has his own golf course." My hands went cold. They hadn't even made the connection. So I said it plainly. Bradford Enterprises just signed a $30 million contract with my company, Nexus. A pause. "Oh, that's interesting. Small world, isn't it?" No congratulations, no follow-up questions, no pride, just a redirect to Tiffany's dress fittings. It wasn't just disinterest, it was erasure. At the engagement party 2 weeks later, I met Richard Bradford for the first time. Tall, polished, silver-haired, and commanding. He shook my hand with surprising warmth. "So you're the brilliant mind behind Nexus," he said. "Your presentation blew us away. Eleanor says we'll save millions just in the first year." Before I could thank him, my mother appeared clearly stunned. "You two have met just now," I replied. "Richard was complimenting our software." "Your software?" Richard asked, brows raised. "Wait, Powell, you're Scott's sister. He never mentioned you ran Nexus." The pause that followed was suffocating. My mother laughed nervously. "Oh, Vanessa's always been our little computer genius. Scott's more the builder, like his father." Richard looked confused for half a second, then recovered. "Well, apparently genius runs in the family in different directions." He meant it kindly. But I knew what had just happened. Scott hadn't just forgotten to mention me. He had deliberately omitted me. Because my success didn't serve his image. Because me being the CEO behind Bradford's next big move didn't fit the narrative of Scott Powell, rising heir to the family empire. I smiled through it. But something cracked deep inside. Even with a $30 million contract, I was still the ghost in my family story. And yet, some part of me still hoped that the wedding would be a turning point. Maybe finally they'd have to acknowledge what I'd built. I poured my energy into selecting the perfect outfit, a tailored navy dress that exuded elegance and control. I asked Marcus Chen, a sharp and kind venture capitalist I'd been dating, to come with me. "You sure?" he asked over dinner that week. "I mean, from what you've told me, this wedding sounds like it might be more stress than celebration." "That's exactly why I want you there," I said. "Having someone who sees me clearly will help me stay grounded." The night before the wedding, I called Scott. "Just wanted to say I'm happy for you," I told him. "I'm looking forward to tomorrow." "Thanks, sis," he said, sounding distracted. "It's been nuts. Tiffany's gone full bridezilla and Richard keeps inviting more guests. Anything I can help with, nah? Actually, just a heads up, there have been some last-minute changes to the seating chart. But it's handled." Handled. That word stayed with me, long after we hung up. I pushed the unease aside. I wanted to believe tomorrow would be different. That for once I'd be seen. But the real shock was still to come. The morning of the wedding, I woke up determined. I had worked too hard, achieved too much to shrink myself at this event. With Marcus beside me and my dignity intact, I would walk into that reception with grace, and if the universe had any fairness, left maybe even a little recognition. The Bradford estate was jaw-dropping. 30 manicured acres overlooking Long Island Sound, sculpted hedges, rose gardens, a private golf course. I pulled up in my Tesla feeling both out of place and quietly proud. I'd earned every inch of progress that brought me to that driveway. Marcus looked around, adjusting his tie. "You didn't say this would be Versailles." I didn't know I admitted. First time I've been invited inside. A valet opened my door with a practiced smile. "Welcome to the Bradford Powell wedding, ma'am." Inside, a string quartet played beside an ornate fountain. Guests in couture sipped champagne under tents adorned with orchids and white roses. It was all stunning and cold. My mother Judith waved us over in her pale pink gown. "Vanessa, you made it." "And who's this handsome man, Mom?" "This is Marcus Chen." "Marcus, my mother." She shook his hand, eyes flicking over his suit, then looked back at me. "Your father's by the bar with Richard and some of the investors. You should say hello." She turned before I could respond, assuming we'd follow. Marcus leaned in, voice low. "She seems warm." "Just wait," I muttered. My father greeted us with a one-armed hug, his smile flickering when he saw Marcus. "There's my girl." "And who's this Marcus Chen?" Marcus introduced himself. "Pleasure to meet you." Before the small talk could continue, Richard Bradford joined the circle. "Vanessa," he boomed. "I was just telling everyone about Nexus, already seeing major returns thanks to your software." The suits around him nodded. One man with a southern accent raised his glass. "You're the one behind the Nexus system. Bradford can't stop talking about it." I started to respond, finally some recognition, when my father cut in. "Well, Scott's the one who introduced her to Richard, always looking out for his little sister." The lie landed like a slap. I stared at him stunned, but before I could speak, a hush fell as the bride approached. Tiffany Bradford glided in every inch, a designer vision in white silk diamonds glittering in her updo. "Vanessa, you came," she said, air-kissing my cheeks. "And in navy, so practical. Though I thought I mentioned we were doing pastels for the family photos." "You didn't?" I replied. "But thank you. Everything looks beautiful." She beamed. Daddy spared no expense. Then her eyes landed on Marcus. "And who might this be after introductions?" Her tone shifted, suddenly sweeter. "Horizon Ventures, you say Daddy's mentioned your firm. You must sit at the family table with us." Marcus placed his hand gently on my back. "Thank you, but I'll be sitting with Vanessa." Tiffany's smile tightened. "Of course. I'll check with the planner about your seating." So many changes at the last minute. The ceremony was a glossy production, celebrity officiant vows that sounded like PR scripts, designer everything. Scott looked handsome but stiff. His eyes rarely met Tiffany's. After the I-dos, we moved to the grand reception tent, crystal chandeliers towering floral centerpieces and linen-covered tables arranged like a luxury gala. "Let's find our seats," I said to Marcus, scanning for the seating chart. A poised wedding planner with a tablet tapped through her list. Powell, just a second." She scrolled, paused, scrolled again. A chill crept up my spine. "Here we are," she said finally. "Vanessa Powell +1. You're at table." "Oh?" Something in her voice shifted. A practiced smile cracked just slightly. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked. "No, of course not." "If you'll follow me." But instead of leading us to the tent, she turned toward a side hallway away from the music and laughter. We walked down a corridor lined with staff coats and cleaning supplies. The sounds of clinking glasses and string music faded. She opened a door. Inside was the catering kitchen. Busy staff bustled past in black and white uniforms, and in the corner, tucked behind a prep table, sat a small folding table hastily covered with a white cloth. 2 mismatched chairs. No place cards. No candles. "You can't be serious," I said. "The bride made last-minute changes," the planner murmured. "We had to prioritize space for important guests." "I'm a business associate," I snapped. "My company just signed a $30 million contract with Bradford Enterprises." The woman blinked. "I wasn't told that. I'm just following orders." And then she appeared, Tiffany glass of champagne in hand. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, syrup sweet. "You sat me in the kitchen," I said flatly. "I'm your husband's sister." Tiffany sipped, eyes gleaming. "We had to prioritize Vanessa. Daddy's partners and close friends needed the premium tables. I'm sure you understand." "No, I don't." She leaned in, voice lower, colder. "Scott approved the seating chart this morning. He knew." The words hit like a punch to the gut. My own brother. Marcus stepped forward. "This is completely inappropriate. We'll be joining the main reception." Tiffany's mask slipped. "The help eats in the kitchen. You should feel right at home considering your humble beginnings." Even the kitchen staff froze. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I looked at Marcus. "Would you give me a moment alone?" He nodded, jaw tight. "I'll wait outside." Once alone, I stood in that kitchen, a room of heat and noise and insult, and let it all hit me. They had seated me the CEO of a company they depended on in the kitchen, on purpose. But I wasn't going to cry in that kitchen. I was going to rise. And the storm I brought next, they'd never forget it. I didn't cry in the kitchen. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the nearest restroom, locked myself in a stall, and let myself breathe. Just breathe. The tears came not loud or dramatic, but sharp, quiet sobs of disbelief, of humiliation, of clarity. How many times had I swallowed the same disappointment, my 16th birthday forgotten, because of Scott's football championship? My graduation from MIT summa cum laude missed because of his frat brunch. The day I opened Nexus's first office overshadowed by a backyard party celebrating Scott's invented promotion. And now this. A wedding where I wasn't just forgotten, I was deliberately hidden. A soft knock interrupted my spiral. "Vanessa." It was Marcus. "You okay?" I composed myself as best I could. "Come in." He was holding 2 champagne flutes. "Figured you could use this." I took one with a grateful nod. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "Don't be," he said. "What they did, it wasn't about you, it was about them. But how you respond now, that's where your power is." His words hit deep. They didn't see me, but I saw myself, and that was enough. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was Eleanor Wright. "Vanessa," she said cheerfully, "just confirming our meeting next week and letting you know the initial $30 million transfer cleared this morning." The timing. As I ended the call, something shifted in me. This wasn't about pettiness. This was about principle. I wasn't here to fight for a seat at a table I built myself. But I was done letting others decide where I belonged. "You ready?" Marcus asked. "More than." We walked back toward the reception tent together. My heels clicked against the marble path, each step surer than the last. Inside, chandeliers sparkled, laughter echoed, and toasts rang out. No one noticed our return. Except I wasn't invisible anymore. I spotted the head table, Richard Bradford laughing with a circle of men, developers, investors. Scott by his side nodding enthusiastically. Tiffany playing the doting bride. "They're pitching a deal," Marcus whispered. "Coastal Developments at the table. Bradford was using the wedding to secure a merger. Probably using my software as the leverage." That's when I made my decision. We walked straight to the table. Vanessa Richard greeted surprised. "We were just discussing Nexus. Were you?" I said calmly. "Because I heard you were discussing the software you implemented without acknowledging who created it." Scott cleared his throat. "Van, not now. We're in the middle of something." "I know," I said. "You're negotiating a deal while your sister, the one whose technology makes that deal possible, was seated in the kitchen." A hush fell over the table. Tiffany's smile froze. "There was a misunderstanding," she said flatly. "No?" I replied. There was a message, and I heard it loud and clear. Richard looked at Scott, confused. "Your sister runs Nexus. You never told me." Scott stammered. "I didn't think it mattered." "And yet it matters enough to close a $30 million contract," I said. Then I pulled out my phone. "Gregory," I said loud enough for the table to hear. "Cancel the Bradford contract, effective immediately." What Richard surged to his feet. "You can't be serious." "I am. Nexus Technologies does not partner with organizations that treat us as invisible while profiting from our work." Tiffany snapped. "You're ruining everything because your feelings got hurt over a stupid table." "No," I said, "because I finally realized my value. And I'm not putting it on clearance just to be tolerated." Scott tried to step in. "We can fix this." "No, Scott. You don't get to fix this. You sat me in the kitchen and called it logistics. You knew exactly what that meant." Richard was red-faced. You'll regret this. You're walking away from millions. I'm walking towards self-respect. You should try it. I turned heels, clicking like punctuation, and walked away from the table, from the lies, from the illusion that I had to earn my place at their side. Behind me, the wedding began to unravel, but I didn't look back, because I finally understood I wasn't the one who didn't belong. They were. We hadn't even reached the valet stand before my phone started vibrating like it had a heartbeat of its own. 15 missed calls, 14 of them from family, one from Eleanor Wright. Marcus opened the passenger door as my Tesla pulled around. "You okay? I'm..." "Good," I said slowly. "Actually, I feel clearer than I have in years. I'd expected guilt, regret, maybe even panic. But what I felt was peace. The peace of no longer twisting myself into someone else's idea of who I should be. Then I saw him in my side mirror charging across the gravel. My father, Vanessa. "Stop right there, young lady." I sighed and rolled down the window. "Yes, Dad." He reached the car cheeks, flushed, breathing heavy. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Richard Bradford is livid. Scott's wedding is falling apart. Your mother is crying, and now you've put the entire family business in jeopardy." I kept my hands on the wheel, because I didn't want to eat in the kitchen. It was just a misunderstanding. "No, Dad. It was a message. One that's been sent my entire life." Marcus leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, Vanessa is the CEO of the company your family just alienated. That's not a misunderstanding. That's negligence." My father's jaw tightened. "And who are you exactly?" "He's with me," I said, "and he treats me with more respect than this entire family ever has. You're going to throw away a $30 million deal because of some wounded pride." I took a breath. "No. I'm ending a partnership with people who treat me like I don't exist unless it benefits them. There's a difference. Do you have any idea what you've done to your brother Richard was going to make him a partner?" Ah, there it was. The truth finally laid bare. It was never about me. It was about Scott. Always Scott. "Sorry if this hurts his deal," I said flatly. "But maybe he shouldn't build his success on someone else's silence." At that moment, my mother appeared. Her makeup was smudged and her voice wavered. "Vanessa, please, Scott is devastated. Can't you just fix this? You mean lie, pretend it was a mistake?" "Again, you're being dramatic," my father snapped. "No, I'm being honest for the first time in decades." Behind them, a small cluster of wedding guests had stopped pretending not to listen. I caught a glimpse of Cousin Olivia standing with her husband. She gave me a subtle thumbs up. "Let's go," I said to Marcus. We started pulling away when another figure emerged from the house, Scott still in his rumpled tux with Tiffany and Richard behind him. He looked wrecked. "Van," he said, his voice raw, "what the hell? Richard's threatening to pull everything from Powell Construction. I didn't mean to hurt your business, Scott, but I'm not going to protect it at the cost of my dignity. You couldn't just sit at the damn table." I stared at him. I wasn't invited to a table. I was assigned a punishment. Tiffany shoved past him, eyes blazing. "You're jealous. That's what this is. You've always wanted what Scott has." I laughed. "You mean unearned titles, fake promotions, and parents who clap at mediocrity? No thanks." Richard stepped forward, tone more measured. "Miss Powell, I didn't know about the seating. Had I known, I would have intervened." "Doesn't change the decision," I replied. "If your company's culture mirrors your family's, it's not a partnership I want." To my surprise, he didn't argue. He nodded. "You've made your point, and while I don't agree with the method, I respect the message." Then he looked at Tiffany. "We'll discuss this later." She looked like she'd just been grounded in front of the entire school. We drove off as silence fell behind us. Marcus glanced at me. "You sure you're okay? I'm better than okay?" I said. I finally stopped asking people to see me. I saw myself. That night, I made pasta and poured a glass of wine. My phone rang again, this time a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Vanessa Powell speaking. "Vanessa? It's Aunt Diana." I froze. My father's sister. The woman who hadn't spoken to our family in 20 years. "I heard about the wedding," she said, and I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I sat down slowly, heart racing. Why now? I whispered. Because I lived it too. I built a design firm in the 80s when women weren't welcomed in this industry. Your grandfather and father handed everything to my brothers, called my business a hobby. She paused. But you, what you did, you broke the pattern. You ended the silence, and I wish I had done it sooner. We spoke for over an hour, and by the time I hung up, I understood something crystal clear. This wasn't just about me. This was generational. And maybe I had just become the one who changed the story. Monday morning, I walked into the Nexus Technologies office with my head high and 17 new emails from Bradford Enterprises. Some were apologetic, others desperate, a few downright panicked. Eleanor Wright had sent 3 alone. I scheduled a call with her for 10 hours and asked Sarah, my assistant, to tell Richard Bradford I was in meetings all day. Should I tell him when you're free? Sarah asked carefully. Tomorrow afternoon, I said, and make sure he knows it'll be on my schedule, not his. An hour later, Gregory, my COO, appeared at my door, arms folded. Okay, he said, half impressed, half incredulous. What exactly happened at your brother's wedding? I told him. The kitchen, the confrontation, the cancellation. He whistled. That's cold and bold. But you're right. We don't work with people who can't see our worth. We lost 22% of projected revenue, I said. We need to move fast. We're already on it, he replied. Westfield Partners wants another demo. Coastal Development reached out this morning. And he paused. So did Apex Investments. They're talking strategic capital. By 3R, I was back-to-back with calls, most of them inbound. Thomas Harrington from Coastal wanted a full presentation. Gerald Winters from Apex had been following Nexus for months and wanted to discuss equity stakes. Even the wedding guests had taken notice. Irony meet opportunity. At 4:57, I got a text from Scott. Need to talk. Just us. Tomorrow, I stared at it. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and I was ready to hear him, but only if it was real. I replied 1:0 p.m. Luciano's on 5th. Just us. The next day, Scott showed up looking like he hadn't slept. He sat down fiddling with the napkin. I was wrong, he said quietly. I didn't speak. I let him sit in the silence. I let Tiffany do it, the seating thing. She said it made her look bad to have my sister outshine me at our own wedding. I didn't stop her. Why not? I asked. Because I didn't want to admit you'd passed me. The words were soft, raw, honest. I thought I was the one carrying the family legacy, and when you succeeded on your own, I felt irrelevant. You felt how I felt for 20 years, I said gently. We didn't solve everything at that table, but it was a start. Even more surprising, my parents started to change too. My mother called a week later, her voice soft. I've been thinking about what you said, about never celebrating your wins, and I asked. You were right. I'm sorry. It wasn't a fix. But it was a fracture in the wall they'd built, and that was something. But the biggest change, it was in me. I stopped chasing their approval. I launched Visible, a mentorship program for women in tech, navigating toxic family dynamics and corporate bias. 20 women joined the first cohort. Every single one had a story that sounded eerily like mine, and I gave them what no one gave me: validation tools and power. A month later, I met with Eleanor Wright in person. She stirred her coffee slowly. Richard wants a new contract. He's willing to issue a formal apology in writing. I'm not sure we need Bradford anymore, I said honestly. I know, she replied, but I also know the industry's watching, and seeing you walk away only raised your value. I promised to consider it on my terms. That night on my balcony with Marcus, I told him everything. You think you'll take them back? He asked. Only if it benefits us, not because I feel like I have to. He raised his glass. To doing things from strength. I smiled. To not sitting in kitchens we built the house for. Weeks passed. Bradford faded. Nexus thrived. Visible grew. and slowly the woman who'd once been desperate to be seen became someone others looked to for light. Then came another text from Scott. Dad wants dinner. Just the family. Something important. I showed Marcus. Go, I asked. Only if you want to, he said. But remember, you're not walking into that room needing anything from them. I texted back, I'll come, and Marcus is joining me. Of course, Scott replied. Mom and Dad are looking forward to it. It wasn't perfect. Family never is. But for once, I was walking into that dinner not hoping to be accepted, but knowing exactly who I was. And that made all the difference. Because in the end, this story wasn't about a wedding or a contract or even a chair at the table. It was about knowing your worth, then acting like it. Even if it costs you $30 million, especially if it costs you $30 million. So I'll ask you this. Have you ever been overlooked by the people who were supposed to see you? Have you ever had to walk away from a place that couldn't recognize your value? Drop your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that visibility starts within. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories of courage, and share this with someone who needs the reminder you deserve a seat at the table. And if they won't give it to you, build your own.